So there have been a lot of trade rumors circulating around Joel Embiid and whether or not he's going to be on the Sixers for life. And so now he just signed the extension, 3-year, $193 million. So that indicates that he wants to be there, right? So now you have Joel Embiid signed until, I think, 2030 with that extension. And you have Maxey until 2029. And you have Paul George until 2028, technically, although he has a player option for the 27-28 season. So maybe 2027, but like 2028 at the max right now. So you have all three of your stars locked up for at least a few years. Like, you have a few years to get this done. So with that being said, I like their big three. Like I said, when it happened, when Paul George, went there, I think the fit is one of the best fits in the NBA. Like, you can't ask for a better fit than Maxey with Embiid with Paul George. Like, it's not even just the fact that they all play different positions, but in a way it is that, because they don't overlap in terms of what they do. They all have different skill sets and different things that they're best at, and they can all take turns doing it. So I know a lot of people doubt the Sixers every single year, and to be fair, they haven't proven to get over the hump. Kind of similar to like the Toronto Raptors when it was the DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry days. And to be fair, they kept running into LeBron. Like, the reason they didn't get to the NBA Finals is because they kept losing to LeBron. Like, they weren't losing to anybody else. So, with that being said, the Sixers haven't even made the conference finals, granted, and the Toronto Raptors did in that era. But they kind of get similar treatment, like, prove it first, and then they'll get their credit, right? So I understand that perspective. But what I'm saying is, like, that big three, if you want to call it that, I keep calling it a big three because I feel like that's the term we all use for that nowadays. I think they have one of the best big threes in the NBA right now, in terms of fit, in terms of like star power, in terms of skill set. Like, let's go through it a little bit. We have Tyrese Maxey, who is as quick as anybody in the league. And he's still entering his prime. He's not even in his prime yet. He is entering his prime. He has so much time to blossom still. So, like, you have a lot of opportunities with him. And he's already really good, right? Joel Embiid, we know, is in his prime. Like, completely in his prime. And if he's already really good, right? Joel Embiid, we know, is in his prime. Like, completely in his prime. And if he has the season that he was having last year before he got hurt, look out, NBA, because he was going to win the MVP at that point, before he got hurt, or at least he was going to be a top 2 candidate because he was playing even better than his MVP season. Like, that's how well he was playing at that time. It was like, I know he didn't drop 50 points every single night, but it kind of felt like he did. Like, there was a stretch where it was like 50, 40, 45. Like, he was going crazy. And so the reason I also like the Paul George pickup is we know what Paul George can do by himself, right? He can average 25, maybe 30. I don't know, but he can average 25 for sure now, right? And we know Paul George can shoot the three, and Paul George can create his own shot. And Paul George is a versatile player. He's going to open up the floor for Joel Embiid and for Tyrese Maxey. And I think it affects Embiid and makes Embiid's life easier more than Maxey's. Because Maxey, we just talked about how Maxey is super fast. Like, he and Joel Embiid play different styles of basketball, right? I feel like Paul George being out on the perimeter, for example, like maybe to shoot a three or something like that, not only makes it less of a requirement for Joel Embiid to be on the perimeter, because there were times, and we know he could shoot the three. He's a great shooter for his size and just in general. But we've always talked about, like, there are times where he should just be in the paint because nobody can stop him. And even if he doesn't get the shot up, he'll get the foul, right? Because you have to foul him or he's getting a layup. Like, that's how it's going to go. So Paul George being there on the perimeter gives him an opportunity, is not exactly the right way to describe it, but it just kind of forces him to maximize what he is best at. And that is being in the paint and just pushing people out of the way and getting a layup, and just going to the rim. Because again, he's so strong, and, he may not be the fastest player, especially, like, he's been so injury prone that, like, every time he comes back, he's, like, a little bit slow because he's not in, the same shape he was prior to. So I feel like people have categorized him kind of as, like, slow nowadays. And I'm not saying he's super fast either when he's, like, super healthy, but we've seen him, like, do chase down blocks and all these kind of things. Like, he has enough quickness to get around people. He just needs to be healthy in order to do that. So to circle back to what I was saying, Paul George gives him not only the ability to be in the paint where I think he is. So to circle back to what I was saying, Paul George gives him not only the ability to be in the paint where I think he is most effective, but it also gives him an opportunity to potentially not get as injured. Now, a lot of these injuries, are freak accidents, unfortunately for him, but maybe if he is not being double teamed, and having to, like, maybe move his foot a weird way in order to, like, get his shot up because he has to get around the defenders, two of them, whatever the case may be. Now, he only has to get around one defender, and maybe he can keep his foot in not a weird position. I know I'm describing it funny, but I'm just trying to give you an example. So this Paul George pickup, I feel like, is not getting enough credit in a way, because I feel like people look at it and they're just like, well, yeah, they got Paul George, but they have no depth, or they got Paul George, but that doesn't make them a championship contender. And I'm not saying everybody's saying that, but I feel like it helps Embiid more than it helps Paul George, if that makes sense. Like, Paul George is going to fit well and he's going to do his thing, but I feel like this is very helpful to Embiid. So I hope that made sense in terms of how I was describing it. So overall, I feel like it was a great pickup for the Sixers. I feel like they literally could not ask for a better option of a free agent pickup at this point in time, because especially depending on, who was available, they couldn't get better than Paul George. So I love the pickup for them. I feel like all three of them fit really well together. I think they had a really good offseason. I feel like they picked up some. I think they got Kelly Oubre Jr., right? They re-signed him. I'm pretty sure they re-signed him. So Kelly Oubre Jr. is back on the roster. They picked up a couple of people. I'm trying to remember who they picked up, but I remember them picking up a couple of people and being like, oh, that's a nice player to add. But I remember them picking up a couple of people and being like, oh, that's a nice player to add to the bench. I am a little disappointed that Paul Reed, B-Ball Paul, is not there anymore, because I thought he was a very good backup center. I liked his game. Congratulations to him on getting, I think he got a decently large contract to go to the Pistons. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he got a decently large contract to go to the Pistons. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what happened. I obviously understand him wanting a bigger role, and like I said, I'm pretty sure he got not like a max contract or anything, but like a bigger contract than the Sixers were going to offer him. So, granted, like, he's young. It's okay to, get the bigger bag and stuff like that. I just felt like he was a really good backup center. But I think they picked up a backup center. I think that's one of the players that they picked up that I liked in free agency. But now I just can't remember who they picked up, which is really annoying me. And I'm going to remember when I get off this live. And I'm going to be like, oh, it was that player. But I do know that they picked up a few good players. And I don't think their depth is as bad as people make it out to be. So I do like what they're doing over there with the Sixers. And now in terms of, what Joel Embiid signing, this extension means for the Sixers, it really just means that they have more time, I guess, to build a championship contender around Joel Embiid. But at the same time, the time is now because he is in his prime, and by the standards of the NBA and his age, he shouldn't be declining yet. But because of his injury history, we don't know, unfortunately, if it's going to hit again this season, if he's going to get hurt again. We hope not. But because we don't know, they really do have to maximize going all in. And while teams should be doing that anyway with their superstars, you should be trying to win no matter what, let's go to the other side, to the West, and Jokic won a ring, so it is a little bit different. But for Jokic, for example, and he is a bit younger than Joel Embiid, but he's in his late 20s. I think he's 28 maybe at this point. And he's still in his prime, but he hasn't had the injury history like Joel Embiid. And so that's not an excuse to not, not put players around Jokic and not make his team a championship contender. But at the same time, let's just say Jokic, and he actually did just recently sign that 5-year max extension anyway. So actually it's a similar category. You have Jokic until, I don't know, maybe 2028, 2029 also. So while it's not an excuse to not put championship, players around him, they have a little bit more luxury to just forget that he won a championship already for a second, to have a little bit more time because we expect Jokic to be healthy. It's not like if Jokic didn't win this season, it's not like they go in that summer being that may have been our last opportunity because we don't know if he's going to be healthy next season. You know what I'm saying? And so we don't wish injury on Joel Embiid. We hope he's healthy. We hope we get the best out of him. But I'm just saying, the Sixers do have a little bit of that added pressure because we do have a lot of injury history there. So that is one concern for the Sixers. But I have to give them credit. And I'm sure other people don't want to give them credit again because, they've had a lot of talent and they haven't made it past the second round, and it's unfortunate. A lot of things have been, some of the circumstances have been out of their control in terms of the organization, in terms of Joel Embiid. Some of the things have been in their control, some of the things have not. However, because they have had, talented players around Joel Embiid, that's kind of why they get a reputation for not getting it done, right? However, I do think that Paul George, circling back to the beginning, does solve some of the issues that they had. And as long as Paul George is healthy, he's probably, in my opinion, the best player of the three, because I'm talking about Ben Simmons and James Harden and then Paul George, of their, big name players that they obviously drafted. Ben Simmons, but James Harden they brought in. I feel like Paul George is the best of the three, not necessarily even the best player of the three, although you can argue that, and maybe Paul George is the best player of those three. I feel like when James Harden was in his prime on the Rockets, some people may argue, that James Harden was better than Paul George, but I'm not here to argue that. I think Paul George is great. I think Paul George is a really, really, really good player. So I think you make the argument that Paul George is the best player of the three, period. But he's 100% the best fit. And I think that he brings an element that James Harden couldn't, only because of James Harden's skill set is not the same as Paul George. That's not diminishing what James Harden does. It's just that James Harden fits better on a different team. That's literally what it is. And then Ben Simmons, obviously, you know, his inability to shoot outside of 10 feet was a big issue for the Sixers, because you want Joel Embiid to be in the paint, like I was saying earlier, and to, you know, back people down and get, you know, shots at the rim. And if you have Ben Simmons, who couldn't make a shot outside of 10 feet, maybe even 5 feet, it really forced Joel Embiid to either be out on the perimeter more, or it made them clogged in the paint, because Ben Simmons has to be in the paint and Joel Embiid has to be in the paint. And I know Ben Simmons was running point guard, so like he was also out on the perimeter, you know, running the show, you know, getting people involved and getting people, you know, open shots. But I'm saying at the end of the day, if Ben Simmons was going to take a shot, it was going to be in the paint. And if Joel Embiid's trying to get in the paint, it's like you can't have both of them there at the same time. You know what I mean? So I do think that Paul George was the best fit of the three. I think we're going to see a really good Sixers team this year. I think Joel Embiid is ready to want to win a championship is not the right way to say it, because he's wanted to win one for a while. But I do feel like there was a mental hurdle that he had to get over, you know, like all players do. Like when you're young, like Anthony Edwards. Let's bring up Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards had never been in the situation he had been in this playoffs. He had never been to the second round of the playoffs, you know what I mean? He had never been to the Western Conference Finals. And so, like, he handled it well, but, like, you have to, you know, experience it first before you can, like, not everybody gets to win the championship on their first try. That's basically what I'm saying. Most of the time, you have to at least go to the playoffs once and get experience. And some of that is a mental thing. So I do feel like Joel Embiid has had enough playoff experience now to be like, I am going to win. That's the best way I can describe it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no, like, I don't know him, so maybe not, but I feel like it has to be at this point, if he wants to win a championship, that he's like, there's no mental blocks. Does that make sense? Like, it's just like, I only see a trophy. Nothing can get in my way. You know what I mean? So I do feel like Joel Embiid should be at that point now. And so I think they have a nice chance. Like, I'm not saying they're the favorites to win the title. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that they're 100% going to get out of the East. But I think the problem is you have 3 teams in the East, in my mind, who are all fighting for an Eastern Conference Finals spot. And that is, honestly, Maxey might take over this next postseason. Honestly, he might. Like, Maxey is that good. He really is that good. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did. He did that in the playoffs. What game was that? Game 2 against the Knicks? Or was that game 3? Whatever game that was, when he hit that crazy half-court shot. And he went crazy that game too, I think, right? Was that the game where he went crazy in terms of scoring? I think it was. So I think there are 3 teams in my mind who most people would consider like fighting for an Eastern Conference Finals position. That would be the Celtics, that would be the New York Knicks, and that would be the Sixers. And then you have a couple other teams like the Bucks, where on paper they should be fighting for a spot, but they really couldn't get it together last season, and so we have to see what's going to happen with them. So that was, you know, an issue. And then I see a comment saying, don't forget my Heat, always contenders. I was about to say them next. And the Miami Heat, they always somehow get it done. You can't ever count them out. Somehow, some way, they will make a run, and they will get themselves to the NBA Finals maybe even, you know what I mean? So I feel like those three teams are most people's favorite to, make the Eastern Conference Finals. And then, like I said, those other two teams. And then who's to say that the Cavs won't come out of nowhere and just go to the Eastern Conference Finals? They're a talented team. What if the Magic, Orlando Magic, what if they take a big jump and Paolo goes crazy? Like, I'm just saying, there are a lot of options. So, at the end of the day, I think that the 76ers are going to be better than people think, if that makes sense. Because I do feel like, as crazy as it sounds, people are kind of underrating them because of what I said earlier, because it's kind of like, the boy who cried wolf. Basically, they keep adding talented players and then they're not going any further. And so I feel like it's gotten to that point with people. And although everybody knows what Paul George is and who he is, they're kind of like, yeah, we'll see. So I feel like they're not getting the attention that they would have if they didn't have the James Harden era or the Ben Simmons era, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, look out for the Sixers. I'm not saying they're definitively going to the championship. I'm not crowning them of anything. I'm just saying, let's pay attention to them because we may be seeing something pretty exciting next season. They're going to be fun to watch. I think they're going to be fun to watch. So, thank you guys for joining this live. I just wanted to talk about, the Joel Embiid extension because it just happened. And just, share my thoughts and all that stuff with you guys. So, see you guys soon. Bye!